Hi, it's Andy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
Welcome to the ADK Rock and Metal channel, and today we're going to be doing discussion topic, or topics. Well, it's going to be a topic, we're just going to do one. And it will be generated by our random discussion generator. It's getting better and better. So we've done a couple of these, so what we'll do is we press the button, the generator brings up a topic. Obviously, if it's one that we've already done before, or for some reason it's right between them and it gives me a black screen, we will hit the button again and we will bring up another discussion and we will see what we go. Let's do it.
Let's get the RTD2.
Yeah. Load up the discussion generator. Let's do it.
Where's the sound effect? Oh, here it is. Yeah.
No, we got the black screen.
Got it.
Go on, hit the space.
Hey,
Oh,
2 for 2.
Go on, hit it. If you always get that frame.
Yeah! Oh, it's mine!
Oh.
Oh, no. I don't think we have an answer. Shall I read it out?
Go on then.
Why do many death metal musicians wish they were respected jazz artists?
So here we go. Well, I have to ask the question. How do you know that?
Because I listen to a lot of death metal and it's starting to bore the shit out of me.
Has death metal man people gone, look, do you know what? I play this really heavy stuff, but I really want to play jazz. Has anyone actually said that in an interview?
Do you know why I...
No, right?
This is
No,
my
they
observation.
haven't. No, they haven't. Next discussion.
This is my observation. So, let's be serious. Look at the three most difficult styles of drumming. I think the consensus is number 1, jazz, number 2, Latin music, number 3, metal. You know, in terms of like technical chops. So certainly with drummers, and actually some of the best bands like Sean Reiner, who was famously in Death and Cynic before he passed away, jazz chops, phenomenal. Guitar players, again, that Death album, Human 1991, the solo and in that, prog metal, you know, a lot of bands.
Prog, maybe.
Yeah.
Prog I would have gone down like maybe death metal, not death metal, but prog metal. So if you're looking at this, maybe like something like prog death, let's use a band as a reference point. Let's use Ginger.
Okay.
Because I think there is definitely some elements of the jazz, but I would definitely say more prog in their style. So I don't know if you mean this idea of respected jazz artists. I would say that they definitely take inspiration from prog metal in their death playing, but I don't think they specifically want to be respected in the same way that you're using there. But
I think what I'm trying to say here, so this is where I'd be interested in your opinion. Has death metal lost its edge really because the guitar players just wish they were playing jazz fusion? You know, it's not evil, this music anymore. It's not. There's nothing in there that's terrifying.
Okay. I'm going to rephrase your question then. Has death metal musicians moved too far away from their traditional style and too much towards prog and jazz?
That probably is the question then.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm going to rephrase it for Andy.
This came up in our group chat when Dave was asking for ideas for discussion points, and this threw me completely because not my access to jazz consists of Akabilk and the Fast Show sketch.
Welcome to jazz club.
That is my knowledge of jazz.
Jazz.
So how can I answer to death metal's guitarists wish they were jazz musicians?
So just reference it from the point of, has the style moved too far away from traditional death?
I think from what I have heard of sort of modern death metal that sort of moves into sort of prog as well. Yeah, it's just experimentation. They've kind of explored and covered, you know, their sort of guitar techniques in the framework of death metal, and they just want to break those boundaries perhaps and experiment a little bit more. Chuck Schuldiner was one. I mean, I'm not really that up on the sort of most recent sort of death metal, and you've got probably some artists and guitarists in mind, Kirk, who are sort of expanding these boundaries. But I think that's really what the question is. And yes, there are some that want to explore, and maybe they'd be sort of better off creating perhaps a side project away from their main band to explore those areas. But whether they all wish they'd picked up, you know, being in the jazz field rather than death metal, I would probably say no, otherwise you wouldn't become a death metal musician. But
I just get the impression certain bands, I'll give you an example, Tomb Mold, who released an album last year, so they were quite a primitive death metal band.
Can you give us a band that we've heard
of? I'd say Tomb Mold does sound like
and then they put an album out last year, and they clearly just wanted to write a jazz album, and we should never discourage experimentation. I just think if it's
That's what I'm saying.
They get to the point where they're like, death metal is never going to be taken seriously in terms of high culture, high art, whereas jazz is. And they want... It's quite an honourable thing to try and do, some of them. They want death metal to be in The Guardian and the BBC website and be reviewed and taken seriously, but come on, it's death metal. Has it gone too far with certain bands? I mean, I prefer
that example,
the progressive version of death metal these days.
The guys in Tomb Mold, I've never heard of them, but release a Tomb Mold album, go away for a couple of months and create a side project, same band, in the jazz field, if that's what they want to do. Don't make a Tomb Mold album jazzy, because you're going to piss off the fans, aren't you?
So,
that would be the case. Go on.
When we refer to them as death metal musicians, are they actually death metal musicians? Because did they actually release a pure death metal album to start with, or are they? They're not actually within the death metal genre. They're just within. They've got elements of death metal in them. Because actually, if it was something, let's say Obituary came out and started doing what we've heard with bands like Ginger and doing all that sort of stuff, technical, then you'd be going, hang on, they're trying to change so much. They're going in a different route. But they haven't. They've stuck to their roots. So maybe these bands have got elements of that. They're influenced by bands like Death and Obituary that they grew up with, but they're actually much more into the technical side of it. And so they're more prog death. So they love their prog metal. They love their death. So they're not really a death metal band, if you get what I mean.
Yeah,
they've got elements of it.
Sometimes it's really only the vocals that remain.
Yeah.
And
by the way, a whole discussion topic on that as well coming up.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, can I just point out, I will prefer nowadays to listen to progressive and avant-garde death metal because I'm just bored with bolt thrower clones. So I'm not against this. It's just something I've noticed that I just wonder if there's this special pleading where someone like, hey, we're in a death metal band, but we should be taken seriously because we're playing jazz fusion guitar chops.
So maybe it's because they want to be as you said, respected not just as jazz artists, but they want to be respected as musicians because they don't see that death metal artists do get that respect because of the simplicity of their parts. Basically, death metal is just very fast and aggressive, but as far as technical songwriting, death metal's not the most interesting songwriting. No. It doesn't have a lot of melody. It doesn't have a lot of lead interest to me. It's just brutality.
Well, we was talking about that on the journey up here. Cannibal Corpse came up in conversation, and I said I'm not a huge fan, but you know it's something you can sort of zone out to and just sort of not take too seriously. But then I have seen a little clip where 3 of the members are in the studio running through frantic disembowelment, and that is absolutely incredible. The musicianship and the finger.
Dexterity.
But throwing George Fisher's vocals over the top of it, and it's just another death metal song. You just listen to that studio outtake almost with them just jamming away. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, you raise a good point there because this is something you'll hear a lot about Meshuggah, who've actually influenced jazz bands, way beyond metal because of the polyrhythms and the strange timings that they're using. But a lot of those people who wouldn't normally listen to metal would be like, oh, this would be good, but I don't like the vocals because he just does that raw, doesn't it, throughout the song. There's no variation. Mm-hmm. So you're always going to have that problem. Maybe a lot of these don't wish they were respected jazz artists, but another thing you'll notice that there's no pentatonic rock, there's no blues in this. It is just, when you listen to it, like the dissonant phrasing and the strange chords they're playing, and then the solos, diminished and all these techniques, sweep picking, pure jazz, and it goes so well. It's just, to me, death metal is just an island unto itself at the moment. And you do have a schism, you have the bands who are like, yeah, we fucking hate that it's gone so far away and we just want to sound like the first Necrophagia album or Scream Bloody God like Death.
The problem is, with death metal is that you've got the original classic death metal bands out there and they're still going.
Yeah.
Which means modern death metal will never... Death metal is such in the sense that it's done everything it can do. As far as you're not going to hear anything new come out of death metal unless it's something that's been like a progressive death metal or some jazz death metal, whatever it is. They've got to add another element into it. But the core death metal, there's no more room for anything in there.
No.
And it'll only take sort of bands like Obituary to disappear, etc., and those will go, and then the next band that comes out will just be seen as a clone of those. There will never be anything original in it, and I think that's the problem with bands that are really into death metal. They don't want to be seen as clones, so the only way they can do it is by bringing other elements in to be able to showcase themselves and separate themselves out from the originals. Because I was listening to Obituary's World Demise in the car the other day, which really cheered up Anna. I put on like I Don't Care and shit like that.
Yeah.
I was like, but that riff on like I Don't
know,
Care.
that's a great. The brilliant to that, yeah.
And I was like, fucking, that's a brutal riff. I love that.
Well,
I was singing along in the car with that one, and she, I was like, I don't care what. And she was like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Andy, we were saying in the car as well, what some of the more interesting takes on this, if you're not going to go down the avant-garde experimentation jazz fusion route as a death metal band, those that are mixing it with metallic hardcore are really interesting. And the irony is, one, most hardcore bands sound like Slayer now, don't they? That's their main influence. And then the other is, a lot of hardcore bands actually sound like Obituary. So death metal's had a big influence on hardcore, and they're pushing it back the other way. And that's really, it's brutal, but you never get any of the monotone vocals. It's really in your face, and that can help. You know, it doesn't need to just be the experimentation. You can still have a solid punch to the face, just mixing those two together.
What, on this topic of like the jazzy style of it, but if you were to say death metal, what genre would you mash it up with to make it more interesting again? What would you? Because you've heard it like prog metal style, and we've heard it with Sepultura where they became more thrash orientated as they went and progressed, and made a bit more industrial. So if you were to go, oh, do you know what? I'd really love to hear death metal mashed up with another genre that would make it really interesting to listen to again. What genre would you throw in?
Synth pop.
Okay.
I mean, like black.
I'm not far off where I was thinking. I was thinking like dubstep.
Yeah,
and then just having like dubstep breakdowns, and then just really slamming to a death metal part.
That would piss off the tastemakers.
Yeah.
But straight
breakups in there would be fucking interesting.
People would be like, yeah, false metal, and it would just be dismissed with it by.
I know, but I would actually find that really interesting. The contrast between something like dubstep, and then just to go to a massive breakdown of death metal.
A drop. A dubstep drop.
Yeah, it would just be insane.
Go on,
I love that.
Think of something.
I haven't got one.
Yes, I got.
No.
It's like death metal with
folk music.
No, see, if you have death metal, then when it's like the falsetto of like Judas Priest, new wave of British heavy metal style afterwards.
That would just, to me, a lot of melodic death metal is like, you know, the Gothenburg.
Yeah.
So, although they do death metal vocals.
But, you know, you gotta have the screw like that sort of style vocals on it. Anyway.
No, don't spoil things.
No, don't spoil it for Andy.
We do need to experiment. We do need to.
Yeah, but this is it. I don't like too much experimentation because then you're then creating another subgenre.
But what is the point?
But I do understand what you said, Dave, about somebody breaks through and they want to try something different, so they're not termed as Obituary clones or DSI clones or whatever.
We've got to come up with something different, and there's nothing to do in that genre. Then you've got to throw in.
But then that's taking away what writing and performing music's all about. You know, you're writing it for yourself primarily. You should be thinking, oh, we can't use this song because it sounds just like Obituary.
Well, the only way that will happen.
Why not?
Well, the only way that will happen that you could do it is if that genre dies a death for a while and then comes back without the originals, and a new band reinvigorates it. So for instance, new metal had that to a degree, and it's come back in again into popularity.
It's a revival.
And melodic death metal. So you see the genres get absolutely blasted, and then like hair metal. Here's a great one. So Steel Panther.
Yeah.
Reinvigorated an entire scene, and where bands were like Poison, who were literally playing tiny clubs again, Steel Panther made it so popular again, they're playing fucking arenas again.
Yeah.
All because of that. So what you would need is death metal to completely die off, and the problem is death metal was never huge enough to be like the biggest scene.
No.
It sat there, and it's just kind of just nicely tripped along in the subgenres.
You know,
hardcore had its boost in a while, and we've had new metal had a boost, but death metal just kind of sat there in the.
So it was the only, like when you look at metal in the 1990s, clearly it suffers a drop, doesn't it, in popularity. In the underground, death metal just remained consistent, and it's still the genre now, it just seems to continue, doesn't it, to bubble along, and those who like real metal.
Death.
They're fine, aren't they, with death metal? It's just that, I guess...
Is it the most integral metal?
Yeah, it probably is.
It's the most honest metal.
Yeah.
Because, it didn't fuck around, it didn't change.
No.
There have been subcategories that come up, but death metal has continued. Like, if you listen to an Obituary album now, I'm just using Obituary because I was listening to it the other day, you listen to a modern obituary and you listen to their early stuff, you go, it all sits nicely and it all feels like it's a natural playthrough. It doesn't feel like they've gone in a random direction. Like we talked about Paradise Lost, went off and did this whole trying to follow trends. Definitely went, fuck it, this is what we do, blam. And I've just, for the last 30 years, that's exactly what I've played, and it's been from day 1 to day 2 to day 3, and now we're 30 years down the line, and that song could have easily appeared on the first album. And that's why I kind of get the vibe with death metal, and that's probably why we see with the modern death metal genres, they're not actually, I wouldn't call them death metal. I mean, when we talk about bands like Ginger, you're like, there's elements of death metal in them, but they're not death metal anymore.
Yeah.
They've got as much metalcore and gent in them, haven't they, as well? Yeah.
Well, there you go. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Now, if you enjoyed our video today, please do like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.